Long ago, hidden deep within the dense emerald embrace of the great jungle, lay the village of Nyama. The trees here grew so tall their canopies kissed the heavens, and the rivers hummed ancient songs as they carved through the land. The air was rich with the scent of earth, firewood, and wildflowers, and every evening the people of Nyama gathered around crackling bonfires to share tales as old as time. At the center of the village stood a mighty baobab tree, older than the eldest. Elder, its roots twisting into the soil like the fingers of forgotten ancestors. The villagers believed it was the home of the guardian spirit, Nyoka, the unseen protector of their land. No axe had ever touched its bark, for it was said that disturbing the tree's slumber would awaken a curse older than the stars. Elder Kwame, the village chief, a man of deep wisdom, but one who had grown proud of Nyama's prosperity. Abeni, a young woman with a restless spirit, her heart filled with questions about the world beyond the jungle. The stranger, a weary traveler dressed in robes of dust. And Time, who arrived one fateful evening with a warning. One night, as the full moon bathed Nyama in silver light, the villagers prepared for a great harvest festival, singing and dancing in celebration of their good fortune. But deep in the shadows, the baobab tree rustled though there was no wind. A single leaf fell, blackened, brittle, lifeless. It was the first sign. By morning, Nyama would be no more. The night sky hung heavy over Nyama, its usual twinkling stars. Now veiled behind thick, unmoving clouds, the air had changed, thicker, heavier, charged with something unseen. The village bonfires crackled, but their flames burned lower, quieter, as if whispering among themselves. It was then that he arrived. A hunched stranger, cloaked in dust and time, stepped into the firelight. His eyes gleamed with warnings unsaid. His voice a rustle of dead leaves in the wind. The villagers fell silent as he spoke. You have grown wealthy. You have grown proud. But there is something you have forgotten, he murmured, his bony finger pointing toward the great baobab tree. At the heart of Nyama, the guardian spirit watches. The roots remember, and when the roots are disturbed, so too is the fate of those who walk upon them. His words were met with laughter. Elder Kwame, the village chief, stepped forward, shaking his head. Old man, we are no longer the fearful people of the past. We have strong walls, full granaries, and wisdom of our own. The spirits do not rule us. We rule our land. The stranger said nothing more. He simply turned, disappearing into the night like a whisper stolen by the wind. As the night stretched into silence, a decision was made, a reckless, irreversible decision. For years, the elders had spoken of building a larger village hall, a grander place to hold their gatherings. But the land within Nyama was full. There was only one place left to clear, the space where the ancient baobabs stood. Despite the warnings, despite the unease that sat like stones in their chests, axes were sharpened, and before dawn's first light, the first strike landed against the sacred bark. A crack split the air, deeper than thunder, heavier than the sky itself. The earth trembled, and a gust of wind, hot as breath, cold as death, swept through the village. The villagers froze, their hands shaking on their axes. The baobab tree bled. A dark, thick sap oozed from its wound, sinking into the soil like ink upon forgotten parchment. Then the whispers began. At first it was just the rustling of leaves. Then it became words, low and guttural, ancient tongues murmuring in the wind. The villagers looked at one another, fear creeping into their bones. Something was watching. Something was awakening, and before the sun would rise, Nyama would pay the price. Abeni woke to silence, not the gentle, peaceful silence of dawn, but a hollow, unnatural emptiness, the kind of silence that pressed against the ears, whispering that something was terribly wrong. She sat up, blinking at the dim morning light filtering through the woven walls of her hut. Where was the laughter of children, the clatter of pots, the murmur of morning prayers? Her heartbeat quickened. She stepped outside and froze. The village was gone. Huts stood where they always had, but they were empty, doors swinging open in the cool morning breeze. The fires in the center of the village had burned down to cold, blackened ash, though they had been roaring just hours ago. The air was thick, heavy with something unseen, something watching. She turned sharply, expecting to see her mother, her neighbor's elder Kwame, but the village was silent. Nyama had been erased. Abeni ran, her feet pounded against the dry, cracked earth, leaving footprints where none other existed. This is a dream, a trick of the spirits. But the air felt real. The wind whispered names she could not understand, and then she saw them. At the far edge of the village where the baobab tree once stood, shadows moved, not people, not spirits. Something in between. Their forms shifted, flickering between light and darkness, like images reflected in rippling water. She recognized faces, Elder Kwame, the village mothers, the children. But they were wrong. Their eyes were hollow. Their mouths parted in silent screams. She took a step forward, and the figures melted into the earth, vanishing like dust in the wind. Abeni's breath caught in her throat. She was truly alone. Then a voice echoed through the trees. The roots, remember. She turned sharply. A figure stood before her, not human, not entirely spirit. It was the stranger from last night, but now his form shimmered like a mirage. His robes fluttered without wind, his face aged beyond time itself. You saw the warnings, child. The village is paying for the sins of the past. Abeni's voice was a whisper. How do I undo this? The stranger studied her, his eyes glowing with something ancient and unreadable. You must return what was taken. Restore the guardian's heart before the sun sets, or the village will be lost forever. She didn't understand, but she had no choice. She turned and ran toward the ruins of the baobab tree, the whispers of the lost villagers chasing her every step. Abeni ran faster than she ever had before, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she reached the ruins of the baobab tree. The great trunk had been reduced to splintered wood and shattered roots, the air around it heavy with a suffocating stillness. The sun hung low in the sky, its golden light fading, marking the final hours before the village's fate was sealed. Then, a sound, a low, mournful heartbeat. It didn't come from the earth nor the sky, but from beneath the fallen tree. She knelt, hands trembling as she dug through the twisted roots. The moment her fingers touched the soil, a cold pulse of energy shot through her veins. The whispers around her grew louder, voices of the vanished villagers pleading, warning, calling. Then, beneath layers of dirt and decay, she found it. A small, a pulsating core of wood, the heart of the guardian. As soon as she lifted it, the earth quaked, the sky darkened, and suddenly she was no longer standing in Nyama. Abeni found herself in the past, a vision forced upon her by the spirits. She saw the ancestors of her people, once a wandering tribe, arriving at this very spot centuries ago. Desperate for land, they had struck a deal with the guardian spirit. In exchange for shelter and fertile lands, they vowed never to harm the sacred baobab. But their greed grew. In secret, the elders of old had betrayed the guardian, carving its heart from the tree and sealing it underground, believing that doing so would weaken the spirit's power and give them complete control over the land. That was the first time the village had disappeared. It had taken generations for the guardian's rage to subside, allowing Nyama to return. But the curse had never truly lifted. The village had been living on borrowed time, and now history had repeated itself. Abeni gasped as the vision shattered. She was back in the ruined village, clutching the wooden heart, its once vibrant glow fading. The air trembled as a form began to rise from the shadows of the broken tree. The guardian spirit had awakened. It was massive, its shape shifting between a towering, faceless figure and the gnarled roots of the baobab itself. Its eyes, two glowing orbs of molten gold, bored into her soul. "You carry the sins of your ancestors," it whispered, its voice like rustling leaves in a storm. Abeni fell to her knees. "I didn't know. Please. The people of Niama don't deserve this." The spirit regarded her, silent. Then the whispers returned. But this time, they spoke to her. The guardian had not come for vengeance. It had come for justice. If the heart was returned, Niama could be restored. But a price had to be paid. A life must be given for the lives taken. The weight of the words crashed down. "Upon Abeni, a sacrifice." She looked up at the ruined village, the shadows of the lost flickering in the twilight. If she did nothing, they would fade into oblivion. But if she offered herself, the village could return. As the last rays of the sun touched the land, Abeni made her choice. She pressed the guardian's heart against the wounded remains of the baobab, feeling its pulse sink with her own. The world tilted, the sky swirled, and the very air shattered like glass. And then there was silence. The first thing Elder Kwame noticed was the scent of earth after rain. The second was the sound of life returning, the gentle rustling of leaves, the distant call of a bird, the whisper of wind through the grass. He opened his eyes and gasped. The village of Niama stood exactly as it had been. The huts, the fires, the paths worn by years of footsteps. It was as if nothing had changed, as if the night before had been nothing more than a dream. But then he saw the baobab tree. It had returned, stronger, grander, more ancient than before, its thick roots twisting deep into the earth, its mighty trunk pulsing with a quiet, steady heartbeat. Its branches stretched skyward, leaves glistening like molten gold under the rising sun. Yet something was missing. Abeni was nowhere to be found. The villagers gathered in silence, their memories hazy but heavy with a weight they could not name. Then, as the first light of dawn fully touched the baobab, a shadow moved within its bark, a faint outline, barely visible, but undeniably hers. Abeni had not perished. She had become part of the guardian. Forever bound to the spirit of the land, a bridge between the world of the living and the unseen. From that day on, Niama was never touched by famine, drought, or misfortune. The harvests grew richer, the waters clearer, the winds softer. The village flourished, but the people never forgot the price that had been paid. Every year, on the night of whispers, the villagers gathered beneath the great baobab, laying offerings at its roots. And if one listened closely to the wind that passed through its branches, they would hear a gentle voice singing, a song of sacrifice, wisdom, and redemption. The past does not forget, and broken promises are never truly buried. True strength is in wisdom, the wisdom to respect the land, the spirits, and the lessons of those before us. Greed can destroy, but sacrifice can restore. Thus the tale of Niama and the cursed village lives on, passed from generation to generation, a warning and a reminder. For those who fail to honor the past may one day wake to find themselves nothing more than whispers in the wind. And so the legend lives on.